Yes, I have different hats on. So I'm a patient. I'm actually a communications expert originally, but I now moved into participatory research. I do all the qualitative research because I was so disappointed in the quantitative research and all the replies from the federal government telling me that care for long COVID was adequate because they had 40 ambulances for patients, and that wasn't really satisfactory for me. Let's see. Disclaimer, I received some financial support from Fionogi, and the rest of the disclaimer is why I'm here. I've encountered a lot of death and disease over the past 3 to 7 years. I want to talk a little bit about our priorities, the challenges that we're still facing, even almost 5 years in. Give some examples, what worked, what didn't work, and also we'll talk about medication safety because it's a topic I care about, and some recommendations from me as a person from Long COVID Switzerland, but also Long COVID Europe, where I'm also active. What do patients need? This was a question we asked we had a kind of a Long COVID citizen science board. So we tried to get some patients with long COVID and some with myalgic encephalomyelitis together to prioritize where we would put money if we ever got any for research. We never got any, so it doesn't really matter, but we still got together and we tried to find the top priorities for patients, and it was no surprise, research on therapies. So treatment, rehabilitation and chronic care management was the top, also interfaces for treatment continuity. Today I would also ask for the overlap with social security and labor markets, healthcare structures, which are still appalling, awareness and knowledge among professionals. The professionals who are here are not the ones who I mean the other 90% at least. Long COVID in children, adolescents. We had a few presentations here and I'm really happy about that. The medical needs versus under-researched diseases. I take the example of ME, of myalgic encephalomyelitis, because I mean, long COVID is kind of new, but it's not really new. The disease burden is twice as high as with comparable diseases such as HIV, MS or cancers. The funding is entirely inadequate. It has always been. I don't know what it is because it's a disease that primarily affects women, or whether we just don't care and it's just much easier to send us to a psychiatrist. I have absolutely no idea. But we never, I mean, this is the US, and the US actually did invest into some research in ME. In Switzerland, at least that's where I've done all the research on it before another project, there's been absolute zero, absolutely nothing. All the research we've done into ME was psychotherapy and graded exercise. ME is, we still don't know anything about it. This was a study that was published in Switzerland in 23. Basically, nobody knows it. It's been over 50 years classified by the World Health Organization. There's been huge delays in diagnosis in our country. We just don't recognize it. It takes over 6 years to be diagnosed. Children, majority never get diagnosed. Everybody is seen as psychosomatic. It takes about 11 doctors and tons of misdiagnosis, and we are basically accused of doctor hopping, but yes. And prescription of inappropriate therapies, which is a huge problem for us. In the center of our study, this was from a survey we did in our group, just ask people what I mean, we did a proper questionnaire, but over 90% have either exertional intolerance or post-exertional malaise. So this is at the core of it. This is a core cardinal symptom of long COVID and of ME/CFS. The other cardinal symptoms, also according to experts in Germany, are orthostatic intolerance and fatigue. So those 4 symptoms are really at the center. There's also the not restful sleep and the cognitive dysfunction, but just looking at those 4 symptoms, we would probably go a long way. The long COVID situation in Europe, I assume you talked about it yesterday. I apologize, I wasn't here yesterday because I had some other obligations, but I assume you looked at that this is just a huge problem. 1% of children, this is about 5 million children in Europe, 30 million adults, according to the latest estimations. Cost of 1 trillion, and we are not investing into research, which is just appalling. The recovery and symptom trajectories, those are some of the challenges. We do not recover. If you've had symptoms for 12 months, that's pretty much it. After 2 years, there's almost no chance of recovery. The rate is less than 10%, and that's the same as it is for ME. There's some recovery with mild or fluctuating, but if you're moderate or severe, the chances are virtually zero, but nobody says it, you know. I mean, we are just told always, yeah, you will get better by Social Security, but we're not getting better. Huge impact on ability to work. I think it was alluded to here before. Also, how many people are affected severely or very severely, that's 1 out of 8 from all the people who have long COVID, and those are huge numbers still. Those people are at home, in bed, in a dark room. They're not doing anything. They're much younger than me. I'm 56, I'm really one of the old bats, but they're really a lot younger, and they have never had a chance to have a proper training, go to school or anything like that. 1/4 are moderate. That still means you hardly ever leave your house. You're certainly not working full time. Those people who work, I'm mild. I have to reduce my job, my work. I'm certainly not running marathons anymore. It really changes your life. Long COVID research, because of the missing research we have done into other post-infectious conditions, we still don't have any biomarkers, we don't really have a clue. And we focus on very unspecific symptoms. I always hear fatigue scale. This is fantastic, but I mean, fatigue is the most unspecific symptom I know. And perhaps we could look at different ones. There's no dedicated targeted research funding. It is our job as patients to ask for that. So with Long COVID Europe, we are trying to put pressure on the European Union and other funding bodies to get 500 million in research funding, but please don't hold your breath. We won't either. There's a lack of competences, knowledge, and interest from researchers for those post-infectious conditions. We are not very popular patients. I'm the most difficult patients you can ever get, and this is just not where they want to put, you know, their publications. It's not very sexy. I wouldn't even know where to publish, actually. There's a gender data gap, and this is an issue. It's not a coincidence that at Long COVID Switzerland, we are 7 women running the show, and most of them are women. It's just everybody, they're female. And we don't have any data. We only have data from male rats, from male mice, and from young, healthy young people for clinical research. We don't really know how the immune system of a woman works. We've kind of got a little bit better with cardiology, but immunology, absolutely no idea. There's still a lack of recognition of physical symptoms. This psychologization is an absolute disaster for most, and the little money that is spent is still spent on all this graded exercise and cognitive behavioral therapy, which is really my main issue. Those wrong diagnoses, the wrong treatments, the assessments that are not adapted to long COVID, that don't take into account post-exertional malaise, they lead to chronification and the worsening of symptoms. And we just conducted a survey in Switzerland, rehabilitation and other treatments. In a majority of cases, it leads to a worsening of symptoms. I mean, we actually have treatment that is prescribed by doctors and by rehab and by insurances, and it makes people worse. In clinical trials, because of the lack of evidence and data on long COVID, one of the main issues is that it's the post-acute sequelae of hospitalized patients. That's where we have the data. We never really generated any data on the typical long COVID patients, the ones who are never hospitalized, who didn't even get a test, like me. And we don't have early data on this. We don't have basic research on other post-infectious conditions or ME. This is gender data gap. We have a lack of definitions still. I mean, I don't know how many I heard already today, different definitions of what long COVID really is. Of the symptoms, what are the cardinal symptoms? Can we just agree on this? You know, I mean, really go together and do this. Subtyping, it has been mentioned quite a few times. We focus on the wrong research topics, from my perspective. The wrong questions, wrong hypotheses, and the wrong outcomes. Not all of them, but many. And we do not include moderate to severe patients. They are the ones who need it most. We don't know what to do with them. I mean, I can come here and I can fight and say something, and I can even explain what I have. We have 0 for severe and moderate patients, and we never include them into trials. This is nothing for them. And we exclude patients, for example, with ME or other post-infectious syndromes like POTS or, MCOS, or, we exclude them, which makes it really complicated because that's what we all have. I mean, there's so much overlap with the other conditions and syndromes, it makes it really complicated. We should focus on the most debilitating and the specific cardinal symptoms. The core biomedical mechanisms, I think that was already, I'm really happy for the people who spoke before me because they already mentioned that. But one point I would like to mention, which wasn't really mentioned, I mean, we need more data on reinfections and vaccines. We need to know what do vaccines cause, what do they make better and what don't they make better. We do have post-vac people. We have people in our groups who got it from the vaccine, the same reaction, whether the spike is produced by the body because of the vaccine or whether the spike comes from the virus, doesn't really matter. It's an immune reaction that I have, it's an autoimmune reaction, and that, whatever is the trigger, doesn't really matter. They have exactly the same symptoms as I do. You have to define those clinical phenotypes, and I mean, the biomarkers, we have seen this before. Coordination, the design we have to really see what is already there. I mean, there are existing research infrastructures that we have to use. We have to adapt those platforms to study really those complex interventions that we need. We have to adapt some instruments that are really validated for related conditions. So, I mean, we are currently in Switzerland at least using fatigue scales for MS to study long COVID and assess long COVID. I can't fill in that form properly. I also can't fill in the depression and anxiety score properly because it asks the wrong questions. We have to adapt them. And there are related conditions such as ME, and there are some specialists for that. Not many, but there are some. The data from hospitalized patient is flawed for us. The basis is wrong, and we're never going to get solid data with that. There should be a better coordination within Europe and globally across the big lake. I think it's a real shame. I mean, this is why I'm really looking forward to pulling forces together and really working together more closely, because I think we can learn a lot from each other. And we need randomized clinical trials. We really do. But while we wait for them, please try something else. Try those quick trials. I was really happy with the concept trials, small pilot studies, find out what is already on the market that we could use, that we could repurpose, some shelf pharmaceuticals, and treat us. There are lots of concerns about off-label use. I don't know how much I take myself. That probably would have been one of another disclaimer on this presentation. I'm taking a lot of drugs off-label. Thanks to them, I'm here. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to be here. There's really a lot more concerns that if you don't work with patients, they will just leave the healthcare system and do it themselves. And we are concerned about not being treated. I mean, I'm always told, you can't, there's lots of danger with off-label therapies, but there is also a danger of not treating people. I mean, we have people dying of lung embolisms, of heart disease, of kidney failure, sepsis. This is a danger. We didn't treat them, so they die because of that. Patient engagement, I think, we are here. I'm really, really grateful that we can work together, and I think this is really where the ideas come from, and that those are the kind of research questions we should try and answer. Particularly on the research question, I don't think you need to involve patients in everything, but on the research questions it would be really important. It helps recruitment and retention, and I'll get to that a little bit later. The rest is, I think, pretty much a repetition. We shouldn't forget that children and older patients, they do exist. It's a lot lower rate, but I think particularly children. I'm really slightly concerned. I have 3 children myself, and I'm a little bit concerned about them being reinfected 5, 6, probably 10 times by now. I don't know what it does to their brain, and I don't want to know. What I know is not good. I just want to talk a little bit about the experience with the Swiss clinical trials that we had, because I was closely involved in some of them, and I monitored them very closely. Dominique quickly mentioned temelimab. So it was at a university hospital, the product failed. We were in close contact with the company from the beginning, and I asked them, how can it be that, you target a protein that is only present, expressed in 20% of the patients at most? How can that, what is that going to do? And the symptoms are neuropsychological symptoms. I mean, how is that going to solve my muscle weakness? How is this going to solve my exertion intolerance? I mean, the questions were wrong, the endpoints were wrong. I don't think this was ever going to work, and we were very openly talking to them, and in the end it failed. I mean, I didn't participate, I could have participated, but I never saw a chance of that working ever. Fampridine, I would have really been interested, because we have cimetidine, we have fampridine that people use at a very high dosage. There's been lots of reports about that, and in some people there's really an improvement. It was at a university hospital in Switzerland. It was terminated due to recruitment difficulties. Can you guess what the recruitment difficulties were? They had 3 to 4 hour sessions where the patients were supposed to do lots of tests. I don't know, I mean, they try to, look at a lot of blood markers and everything, but it was absolutely impossible. They never talked to us. I could have told them right away, it's never going to work. They enrolled a single-digit number of patients, and it was a pain in the butt for those patients who participated, and we have not even intermediary results now. It's an absolute disaster. Work with us, talk to us, and we can make sure at least that it doesn't fail because of that, because I would have loved to have the results from fampridine. BC007, I was really hoping that they would present their data here, even if the product fails. I think we can learn from this, and I'm really disappointed. This was one of the products where I had a lot of hope, because it was for heart failure, and I was really hoping that we could, talk to them and discuss why it failed and, what we can learn from it. Unfortunately, they went bankrupt, and they're like temelimab, the company, they're both bankrupt now. Berlin Cures is actually based in Switzerland. They have a letterbox there. So they're German, but they're also Swiss. That's why I care. Pycnogenol, it's a small study with a kind of a plant product that you can buy at the pharmacy in France, and in Switzerland they're actually doing a clinical trial on this. It's supposed to improve heart functions. We've been working very closely, and that's something that came out of this Long COVID Citizen Science Board, and we have a really close collaboration, and we'll definitely have results. I don't know whether it's going to work or not, but at least we will have results, and we will definitely get explanations for it. And I was really happy that we could really work with them, and they went home to patients. They sent the drugs home to patients. They really try to adapt to what is needed to run a trial for long COVID patients. Germany is leading the way when it comes to clinical trials. They have, they got a lot of funding, a lot of pressure. The Germans are very organized, so they really got their act together and really made a lot of pressure. So they have a lot of money for research funding, and they have this clinical trial platform out of the Charité. The Charité already did a lot of research before on chronic fatigue. So they're actually experts on this, and there's this national clinical study group which has really running different smaller studies in parallel. And this is really where I put a lot of the hope out of Europe that some results will come very soon. I mean, they already published some results. Immune absorption was another one which they are testing there, which I mean, Dominic didn't mention, but that would maybe something that would be interesting as well. Mm-hmm. They also publish a list of on-label and off-label therapies, which is really, I mean, this is what we should be doing. I mean, really try and see what there is already, what we can do, what is really on-label, what is off-label. And they have the competence centers to back it up, to run the trials. They have the cohorts already there, so they can really run those trials quite efficiently. Medication and the reality of medication here. I mean, I'm getting my information on Twitter, not anymore. Obviously, I've left Twitter, X. But that's where we got our information from. I mean, there's some pharmacists who did some review and or just collected some data, and then she just published it and said, let's just try that. So there's self-medication, we conduct surveys, there's biohacking. I mean, we make our own drugs. I have some pharmacists in rural Switzerland who make drugs to order. I can just go there and say, can you just put that together? They do it. We have only a handful of doctors who actually prescribe drugs. We are accused of the doctor shopping, doctor hopping. But I mean, I really don't have a choice. If you don't treat patients, doesn't mean that they are not treated. They will treat themselves at their own risk, at their own cost. And it's an absolute disaster if you manage a Facebook group with 5,000 patients who hear something somewhere and then want to, and I try and manage it and try and, you know, ask doctors and ask researchers whether that's a good idea or not, and it's really difficult. But you can't stop it. We have to try and work together with them. Some of the drugs that people are using, they're using everything. Prescription drugs, and you get it. You get everything like that on the internet. I can get you anything. You can test me. Do no harm. This is my collection. I'm not actually taking very much, but that's mine. I did that for a presentation for medication safety. People use lots of different drugs, for a long time. There's lots of interactions, cocktail effects. We have some addictions in several areas, resistances, tolerances, illegal medicines, lots of alternative medicines where people think, oh, this is not a problem. It is a problem. We have absolutely no idea about the long-term effects and side effects of diseases, medication, supplements, and procedures. I was kind of curious when Dominique mentioned the BMI being a risk factor. I just know that I put on 10 kilos by using cetirizine for more than 4 years. So I actually put on weight. I think most of us put on a lot of weight, so I wonder whether that was before or afterwards. I have no idea. I was quite slim before. You can't cure us, but please treat us. We don't expect any cure now, but we have to treat people. The trials could be conducted at those competence centers where people really have an idea what is going on. We need those adaptive trial platforms, cohorts. We have to include older people. Long COVID, mild, moderate, severe. ME, long COVID, which is another type. Post-vac, please don't forget people who got it from the vaccines. And pre-pandemic ME of any origin, and also what happened during the pandemic. I mean, it's complicated as it is, but there's lots of, bacteria, lots of other events in people's lives that can trigger ME, and I think we just have to try and understand it. The subtyping is important. All the other syndromes that are connected are very important. We have to benefit from the little experience that we have with ME and use the scores from ME to better understand it. We need research in any area, I think, but also look at the impact on what happens, particularly because it primarily affects women who don't have social security very often, who work part-time, do a lot of unpaid care work. I don't know what to do with the women I work with anymore because they have absolutely no money left. Take-home message, sense of urgency. I mean, it's 4 years, it's going to be soon 5 years, and we have no treatment, nothing. It's still seen as an incurable disease. It's very mystical. We're still demystifying. I mean, we know some things. We should use that knowledge. Focus on the core, really what is in the center, and try and find solutions there, and adapt what we already have, and try and generate results very quickly. The off-label, I know that this is going to be a discussion point, so I'll go over to the discussion very quickly. Thank you very much.